You know, when I stop and think about it, all this talk about rainbow body is done in a religious context, and the truth of the matter is, rainbow body has nothing to do with religion. It's about the nature of reality. And here in the West, indeed, almost all the world, we labor under a false understanding of the nature of reality. The view we have stems from the Bible and the creation story that goes in the beginning, God created. And the operative word in that verse is the word created. Because when you create something, then that which you create is separate from you. And if you create something else, then it's separate from the thing you just created. So what you convey is a notion of absoluteness. I created it, there it is, and separateness. And so that's not what it is. And so, in effect, we have theologists who interpret the Bible setting the nature of reality, and reality is what it is. It really doesn't give a flip about what theologists think it should be. Okay, it's science's job to figure out what reality is, and then once we know reality, then the theologians can do their thing. I've always been impressed with a very colorful quantum physicist named Richard Feynman. Very colorful, somewhat flamboyant, very popular. And he speaks just what I talked about. He says, it doesn't matter how beautiful your theory is, it doesn't matter how smart you are, if it doesn't agree with the experiment, it's wrong. And so when we look at the rainbow body phenomenon, we know it happens. Rainbow body, where a body under certain conditions vanishes. It dematerializes into its atomic parts. And we know that happens because we have the weight of observation, experience, Shroud of Turin research, and the science of the atom, and that tells us that. The Buddhist monk Khenpo Cho, all right, he died in September 1998, and he didn't leave a corpse behind. The Buddhist monk Lama Chu died in July of 2011, and he didn't leave a corpse behind. Jesus died in about 30 AD, thereabouts, and he didn't leave a corpse behind. Now, if you look at the internet, it will tell you that there are 160,000 documented cases of rainbow body on file. Now, I don't know about that number, but I have found 8 or 9 of them. I've listed them here that speak to the realness, authenticity of rainbow body. And then we have the scientific work on the Shroud of Turin, Jesus' burial cloth. There's, after nearly a century of scientific work, you have to conclude that his body dematerialized into its atomic parts, just like the rainbow body adapts. So you have the Shroud of Turin, and then there's the science of the atom. Albert Einstein tells us that everything's made of atoms, we know that, and that when you look at the atom, well, what makes up an atom? you find that there's something there that it's subtle. I mean, when you know it's there, okay, but it's intangible. You can't touch it. You can't see it, okay? And then there's just no words to describe it. His peer, Max Planck. Now, Max Planck isn't a household word like Albert Einstein, but he was a very famous quantum physicist. In fact, he's known as the father of quantum theory. And Max Planck tells us, he said, you can take what we call a solid object, and you can divide it into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller parts. But when you get down to the atom and you try to divide it, there's nothing there. All there is consciousness. Consciousness, or the atom, is just consciousness that's taken on a form. So you have the weight of all that information. Of course, I always go back to Father Tiso's book. I have such a respect for Father Francis Tiso. We've talked about him in the past. An ordained Catholic priest, highly educated, well respected, and so he writes this book. He investigates the death of this Kimpo Cho 2 years after the death took place. And he comes up with the same conclusions that I do about Rainbow Body, except that he gets there from a more of a scholarly, academic point of view. I look at it through science, but he has a message for religion. I mean, he just says that what's happened to Jesus, body dematerialized, is within the capability of every living human being who's willing to follow a yogic practice. And he also has a message for science. He says to science that what you say is impossible is in fact possible. So what are the implications of all of this? You know, there's a basic question now on the table about reality. You have the theologic view. God created the atom. He put in a set of rules, okay, that guide, that allows atoms to combine and assemble themselves into form. And in doing that, you've created something of form. And then the other point of view is that you've got consciousness, and that's all there is beneath the atom is consciousness. It doesn't create, it organizes itself into form. It too creates a set of rules, we call that the nature, the laws of nature, that allow itself in atom form to combine with other atoms, okay, and make up objects of form. So, you know, the implications are, you got one side, God created, and what he created is separate, okay, and absolute, depends on nothing else for its existence. And you got on the other side, you've got consciousness, and consciousness doesn't create, it just assembles itself into form, okay, and it's not separate. Everything's not separate now. It's all consciousness, just in different forms, and it's conditional. That form, that object of perception, is only perceivable as long as consciousness has a desire to be in a material form. And of course, that takes us back to the rainbow body, where consciousness decides that through the work of the adept, the practitioner decides that it doesn't want to have material existence. So we compare those two alternatives side by side. The God alternative falls off the radar screen, and it tells us that all objects are of perception, and particularly your body is you. All right, you are consciousness assembled into form. We talk about people and we say, if they're acting strangely, we say, well, that person has lost his mind. Well, that's not really a very correct statement, because it implies that mind is something a person owns. Mind is not something a person owns. Mind is what you are. It is the person. The person is mind. So I got to thinking about this. How does that really play out in real life other than the rainbow body thing? And there's this ancient meditation technique that has known practice, that has known healing power. And it's called sailu. It's ancient, it's Tibetan Buddhist, and it predates the infusion of Buddhism into Tibet. It has known healing power, we know, because they practice it at MD Anderson Hospital, and they use it to help cancer patients in their recovery. It's a complement to traditional teaching, to additional treatment, traditional treatment. I'll get it right in a minute, traditional treatment. And so what it is, it's a mind-body practice where using the medium of breath, it draws mind and body together. So we are mind, but we get separated because body has the pull toward pleasure, comfort, and security. Mind is full of its divine properties. It's uncreated, immortal, all-knowing, all-present, okay? And so this practice using breath pulls them together, and what it does, in effect, is push the God qualities that we have via mind into the body, and it pushes out, okay, the material qualities of pleasure, security, and comfort. So I compare this, I put this little chart together, and so you see the little figure of a man, and he's all black, and he represents someone who is full of himself, pleasure, comfort, and security. And the guy next to him in gray has some of his divine qualities infused into his body, pushed out a like amount of pleasure, comfort, and security. So he's a little bit more divine, consciousness himself, okay, than the guy next to him. And then if you look to the far right, there's an image there, you just can't see it. And that's the guy who has completely pushed pleasure, comfort, and security out of his being. And he now is 100% mind. He's divine. And when that happens, there is no body. That's the tantamount of mind or consciousness saying that I don't want to have a material existence. So what do you take away from that? So how do I summarize that? It's that we got the wrong view of reality, that everything is separate and absolute, that everything is dependent on consciousness. And so you are your body because you intend to have a material existence. And if you'd ever stop having the desire to have a material existence, okay, then you would vanish, just like we see in the rainbow body tradition. So, you know, in my way of thinking, that can lead to religion, but before you can lead to religion, you need to understand the true nature of reality. Once you know the true nature of reality, then you got something to build on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you the next time.